Good evening, and welcome to another analytical version of Diatribes from the Voice of Doom. Now here's your analogous and anal expletive host, Voice of Doom. Hello. Alright, I'm gonna get on the tail end of the bandwagon and give a few comments on the speech by Orangey. And he was very smart to not call it a State of the Union, but just call it a joint session of Congress where he will speak. Because then he didn't have to stick to the patterns and mores of giving a State of the Union, but rather just giving a speech. And it was enlightening. And I think we all know what's going on. And I think that speech and the reaction to it pretty much made my point on my last diatribe. I mean, in spades, the whole world was watching the D's make fools of themselves and just dig a deeper hole than they were already in. They were down to 30% approval, and they had to take it down to maybe 20%, and I hope that they take it down to 0. Because their behavior, as everyone knows by now, was appalling in every shape, way, and form. But I'm not going to go into that, because you could go into YouTube and see 5 billion posts on how bad the D's were. We all know how bad they were. They couldn't apply anything. They could not stand up for anything. And Orangey made the point in his speech. He said, I could cure cancer. I could bring world peace, lasting world peace to the entire planet, and they would not like me. So I'm not going to try anymore. There's one thing about Orangey, he tells it like it is. And everybody knows what he's talking about, but we all know that they were disgusting curs. And if it was up to me, and I know this would be called lawfare, but if I was president, I would declare the Democrat Party a terrorist organization, and then I would do my best to eradicate them, but that would probably be considered draconian and you know, biased and partisan. And it's like, no, if you're criminals, then go to jail. That's my credo. But things are happening, and Orangey is succeeding on every front. Even when it looks like he's failing, he comes out on top. But I'm not going to talk about that too much. I got curious. I want to do something a little different and probably educate some people, or at least get them curious and do their own research. But I was watching the speech, and instead of watching so much for what Orangey says, I was watching body language and how people react and what they are doing. And one thing led to another. And the thing that led me to the other was when Orangey introduced RFK Jr. as the HSS cabinet member, and but RFK was taciturn, you might say, about standing up because he's from a Democratic dynasty, and to join the other side because he believes in what he believes in, to the D's is considered treasonous. And Orangey made a point of that, but got me to thinking about other presidents. And before I get into what I did, I will tell you that Orangey's a showman. Orangey's theatrical. And he did a lot of things in that speech, which is probably the most brilliant thing I've ever seen in my life. And that's saying a lot. That he had people in the audience that he introduced and gave anecdotes about, that it would be hard to not be moved. I think the thing with the little kid, DJ, whatever his name is, was touching. I mean, I really choked up. And I realized that the brilliance of Orangey, because the D's all sat on their hands for everything, and they were disruptive and they were idiots, and the whole world saw it. So Orangey developed and established a win-win situation for him. Either he introduces these people and the D's stand up, or he introduces them and they sit on their hands. No matter what, he wins. Because they look really bad. And the whole world knows it. But I won't go too much into that. Everybody knows all this. I got curious when RFK stood up and he looked rather sheepish that he was in Orangey's cabinet. But he wants to do what he wants to do, and he knows he can only do it with Orangey. And I started thinking about JFK and Bush and Clinton and Obama and all the others who have given State of the Union addresses. And I decided to go back. That's the one thing nice about the technology and the communication revolution that we've had over the last 20 years that allows me, with a click of a mouse, to look at State of the Unions from the past. And that's what I did. Now, if you have time, if you have half a day off or a full day off, to devote 8 or 9 hours to looking at these past State of the Unions, my main impetus was I wanted to see when did the theatrics start. Because I know the D's and how they interpret things. And they, will say he's cynical and he's just using people for his own aggrandizement and all this other crap. And it still doesn't get him out of the fact that if you don't appreciate a kid who has fought cancer and wants to be a police officer and gets an honorary Secret Service identification, that is great TV. It's great for everything. I don't want to describe it too much. We all saw it. But it got me to think about, when did the theatrics start? I wanted to find out when State of the Unions became, I don't know, just shows of, I don't know how to describe it, but the way they use people to make their point. They bring the real people into the chamber and introduce them. Now, I can understand the D's going, yeah, this is just all a bunch of pulling at your heartstrings and it's all cynical and all that. But when did it start? So, starting with JFK, I went back in time and looked at the State of the Union. Now, JFK gave a State of the Union that if you look at it from 1962, it sounds almost exactly like what Trump or what Orangey was saying. There's no difference. He was talking about trade. He was talking about foreign policy. And it's kind of like being in a... You can travel back in time. And you can look at what these presidents said, and then you know what's going to happen. Well, we're going to... JFK was saying we're going to, try to get rid of these communist regimes or get rid of these communist insurgencies that are taking over various places, and he didn't know in 1962 that he would be laying the groundwork for a miserable, stupid war that everybody knows was stupid. But what he was saying seemed to be sensible, and I was expecting JFK to be glib and be humorous, and he wasn't. He was giving a serious State of the Union. He didn't introduce anybody. He didn't make any points with trying to tug at heartstrings. He just gave a State of the Union. So I went on. I didn't bother with Johnson because I know he's just going to give a standard run-of-the-mill thing. I didn't really bother with Nixon because I knew he would give a standard run-of-the-mill thing. But I went on to Clinton. And it's interesting because if you watch these State of the Unions back in the day, I mean, they were more cordial. The Republicans were clapping for Clinton when they said something they liked. And even though Clinton had just lost the Congress to Newt and his gang, they were cordial. And I went on to Bush. I won't talk about all the issues they talked about, because we know what became of some of them. I went on to Bush the younger. And the first thing Bush did was he congratulated the first female Speaker of the House, when he obviously lost the House to the D's and Pelosi took over. And they were very nice to each other, and Pelosi was all smiles. She didn't mind George W. Bush one little bit. So there was no theatrics there. But I did notice that there was bipartisan support, and there was still sides of the aisle that did not clap for certain things. Now, I moved on to Obama. Now, Obama's a good showman, and he's an everyman who people can relate to. Okay, fine. I like that about him. And he might have been a great president if he had waited 20 years. He was in no position to be president when he got elected. But everything was kind of bipartisan. Some Republicans clapped for Obama, and some did not. So I didn't go through every single State of the Union that's ever been given, but I just noticed that it wasn't until Orangey came on the scene that the theatrics started coming, because he could use them for effect. And it's all history after that. After Orangey decided I can use people in my gallery to make my point, then it just escalated from there. And then I didn't look at any of Petri Dish's speeches because I don't even want to see that, because he's disgusting. But I knew that the theatrics were accelerating. Let me introduce to you an ice skater who lost her job because of whatever. I don't know. I don't want to go into the details of all that. I just know that Orangey was the progenitor of the theatrics of the State of the Union address. And he's used it to great effect. But I think for people that really are interested in history, instead of reading history books, you can watch history. It's very interesting because there's people talking with each other, and there's people that are cordial with each other that hate each other's guts now. And even Trump's first State of the Union, they were nice to him. They gave him the benefit of the doubt. The only time that the Democrats sat on their hands was when he talked about the border wall, which would have saved us a hell of a lot of money and trouble if it had been allowed to be built. But things didn't work out that way. So I don't really have much to say on this. I could go into detail about how crappy and what miserable shrew curs, demons the Democrats are. First with old man Al Green, or whatever the hell his name is, shaking his cane. This is a meme, raising Cain. Come on. The guy just fell into the trap, and he is bound and determined to impeach Orangey, and he's going to be gone long before Orangey has any worries, because he's just an old codger, curmudgeon, and he lives in 1963. He's still fighting the Civil War, the Civil Rights Act. He's still on the bridge marching with Martin Luther King, so forget him. But it was a fiasco from get-go, and it just showed me, if you look through history, it showed me the degeneration of political discourse. And I'm glad to see it, because I think the D should be eradicated. I think by 2028 or 2032, the D should be a defunct organization, such as the Whigs, that just fade into obscurity. And I don't know who takes their place, and I don't care. All I know is things are going well with Orangey. And they're going to continue to go well because he's a negotiator and he's a deal maker, and he's going to make things happen. We can't have wars everywhere. And it's already become obvious to anybody that we can't keep funding every little idiot thing that these idiot liberal morons want to fund. Trying to get LGBTQ in the mainstream in Burma, which is one of the most draconian, strict countries in the world. If you get caught with a joint in Burma, you go to jail for 40 years. And they want to change things in Burma. So everybody knows how stupid that is, and Orangey is the first one to bring it to light, which we already knew, but he tells it like it is, and I applaud him. And I hope he has a successful 3 3/4 years left to improve this country, because otherwise we're not going to make it, because everybody's already saying we can't do it. The economy won't sustain this debt. So we got to cut, and if we have to fire 5 million people, bureaucrats, oh well. They can find a job at Jack in the Box. They're hiring all the time. So I didn't really say things as glibly and as articulately as I wanted to, because I've had a few, and I'm still looking for a job, and so I'm a little depressed. But I just thought I'd get my 2 cents in on this stuff because it's been going all over the internet, and I want to get my crap in. So check into these State of the Unions from previous presidents. Take the time to watch their speeches. It's very interesting, and it's not the speech that's interesting, it's the interaction. It's who's talking to who, and you know how history has played out since those days. It's very interesting if you're into that kind of thing. So I'll leave you to do that, and I'll come back with another one later because I'm sure things will be happening which I'll be able to comment on in short order. So thank you for listening, and I'll talk to you later, and good night.